For a few moments tonight, we want to take a look at our neighbors in Venezuela. In the last 24 to 48 hours, we have witnessed one of the most catastrophic events in the history of Venezuela. I am told by the experts that this is potentially the largest and strongest earthquake that Venezuela has had in its history, at least for the last over 150 years. We are told that it's suffered from two earthquakes within 39 seconds of each other. And my information shows to me that the first earthquake, which measured 7.2 in magnitude, was only at a depth of 13 miles deep. It was followed 39 seconds later with what has been reported to be one of the strongest earthquakes recorded. And some, I can't remember the exact figure, some 3,000 times more powerful than the 7.2 in terms of its energy. 7.5 within 39 seconds at a depth of 6 miles. And we have seen a tremendous devastation. And my understanding from what I have observed, and I have asked Dave to pull up some videos that we can, I don't know if we will necessarily need to have the audio of those videos, or if we can just look at them and see what is happening in this country. And there has been tremendous response and assistance offered. Okay, so let's take a look at this one. And Dave, I think we can go ahead with the audio, and I'm just going to mute my mic for a few minutes that we can see what is happening in our neighbors in Venezuela.
In Venezuela this morning, a race against time. Rescue teams and volunteers working around the clock to find survivors and recover the missing buried under collapsed buildings. The twin earthquakes striking Wednesday night during a national holiday when many families were at home. New satellite images showing the massive scale of devastation. One of the hardest hit areas, La Guaira, located just north of the nation's capital, which interim President Delcy Rodriguez called a disaster zone.
No tiene explicación.
Christian Carreño says he lost everything and that people are still trapped underneath what's left of his apartment building. Mother of three, Diana Delgado, desperate to find her missing 8-year-old son. Alessia Santa Croce, still in disbelief she made it out alive.
My sister called me and told me, like, you have to look for a safe place. And I was telling her, like, there is no safe place here. It's burning. The buildings are burning. How are we going to reach a safe place?
How lucky do you feel to be alive?
I'm blessed. I'm blessed.
As the search for survivors continues, pledges of aid pouring in from all over the world, including the U.S.
They had a tremendous earthquake last night that you read about, massive in Caracas. But we're going to help them out.
The State Department deploying 2 specialized search and rescue teams and mobilizing more than $150 million in humanitarian aid. Welcome news to Venezuelan Americans in South Florida who still have family overseas. You have any loved ones or anyone?
I have a sister, niece, and 2 cousins over there. They are fine. They're scared.
What did she feel?
¿Qué sentiste? Terror. Terror.
In Venezuela, thousands of other families are still searching for answers. Photos of the missing are spreading across social media, shared in the hope that someone somewhere will bring them home.
Yeah, you can see the volunteers again here hard at work packing all of these boxes. The U.S. military also saying they're going to be providing aid. U.S. Southern Command or Southcom saying they're pledging aircraft support, logistics, as well as life-saving capabilities to help the people of Venezuela. Laura and Garrett.
All right, George Solis starting us off this morning. Thanks, George.
Wow. I mean, you can't help but watch these videos, and that is just one of them that Dave just pulled, and there's several others that you can find on YouTube. And I want to encourage you, please go and take a look to see what's happening. I'm going to explain to you why I'm going to do that. And Dave, if you can find a couple of others, that would be wonderful. I am also told that this earthquake occurred in one of the most densely populated areas of Venezuela. only a few miles. I think it's about 80 miles or something like that to the west of the Caracas. And my understanding is that there has been quite a lot of damage as well in Caracas, quite a lot of damage in the city where this occurred. And I am being told, I am not the expert. Remember, I don't have a degree in any of this, but I'm listening to the experts. I'm told that they anticipate somewhere between 10 to 100,000 people injured or killed in this matter, in this earthquake. And I pray to God that it's nowhere near there. I really, really do. People, there you see, rescuers are pulling people out with their bare hands. As far as we know, the earthquake has killed about 920 at this point that we are aware of, but they do expect the death toll to rise and rise significantly as they continue the rescue efforts there in Venezuela. Now, there is a question concerning the regional implications for the Caribbean, and I want to explain to you why that question is there. While this day has gone on, there have been several earthquakes around the Caribbean. There was one just this morning off of St. Kitts, Nevis, and Anguilla in that area. Barbados had one a couple of weeks ago just off of our east coast. And it would appear that there is an increasing aspect of earthquake activity in this region. And I believe we need to be aware of it, and we need to keep alert with regards to this entire matter. Yes, I saw, thank you, Vihoy. Online, they are saying around 100,000 people. And that is something indeed. That is something indeed that we pray. We really, really pray does not manifest itself. We really pray that that does not manifest itself. David, if you find any others, just let me know, and we'll share them. That we can be in prayer. And I must tell you that there are times as I sat watching these videos and I prayed and I said, Lord, how can I help these people? How can I get into Venezuela? How can I go to assist? When we had the Hurricane Ivan in Grand Cayman, I was contacted by the Bishop of the Assemblies of God Church there in Grand Cayman, Reverend Torrance Bob, and he asked me if I would be willing to come up and manage the Mission of Hope, which is the humanitarian aspect of the Assemblies of God, the Mission of Hope efforts there in the Cayman Islands during that hurricane. After that hurricane, where they had winds in excess of gusts in excess of 200 miles an hour. And of course, a 95% devastation of housing, roofs. I mean, it was just unbelievable. It looked like a war zone when I arrived there. I was also in Haiti shortly after the earthquake in Haiti as well, again with efforts there to help with efforts there as well. And these natural disasters are tremendously, they impact you tremendously. And we in Barbados have a lot to be thankful for. And listen, I'm not saying this to be religious. I'm not saying it because I'm Christian. I don't care what religious affiliation or denominational affiliation you render yourself to be a part of. Nobody in this country wants to experience what we have just observed, nor what we know others around us. Jamaica last year with Melissa. None of us want to experience this. And I'm praying. I'm praying not just for Barbados. I'm praying for the region, for the entire Caribbean. We understand this year from El Nino that it's going to be a bit of a different season. It appears that there's going to be a lot more activity in the Western Caribbean as opposed to the main development zone in the Atlantic Ocean. Not that there are not going to be systems coming across, because we can see a tremendous number of very strong tropical waves coming across from Africa. And so far, thank God, they are remaining south. And we are being told that they're going to navigate more north as the season goes by. But several tropical waves just yesterday, day before today, this evening, we had some touches of rainfall coming out of some of those tropical waves that are slipping past to the south of Barbados. I am not a meteorologist, but I do follow some of the top meteorologists. I follow NOAA. I follow Mr. Weatherman. I follow Weatherman Plus. Both are fully qualified individuals. Mr. Weatherman actually was just in Trinidad and was in Barbados a couple of weeks ago as well. They're two experts in the weather. And I must say to you that, we're talking about climate change. People are talking about climate change. This all began, as far as I recall, in 1993 with Al Gore with sustainable development. And he began to prophesy, if you can call it that within 6 to 8 years that the coastlands of countries around the world would be overwhelmed by the oceans. And, islands like Barbados would be overwhelmed. Well, I don't know about you, but I continue to drive around and look at the coast of Barbados where you can see it, because it's becoming increasingly difficult to see any of the ocean that we used to see in Barbados along the west coast, and for that matter, even the south coast. It looks like we're going to have to go all up in St. John and walk the hills if you want to see something, or going down on the East Coast Road and drive along down there. But I don't know that we have lost any land or lost any significant aspects of beaches. What I do know is that recently, in an article I saw carried in one of our local media newspapers, that we have had significant damage done to our coral reefs. Now, of course, again, I saw some aspects of discussions around, the vessels that are docking, the cruise ships that are docking, all of these vessels that are burning fossil fuel left, right, and center. And tourism is supposed to be our mainstay, and cruise tourism, one of our major planks in the tourism industry. These are the things we're being told. These are the things that we're being told. But I am aware of the fact that there are those who are investigating the matter of the authenticity of the charges as it relates to the whole matter of climate change. Because one thing is sure, it's consuming a lot of taxpayers' money, and a lot of the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer as a result of all this so-called discussion surrounding climate resilience and climate change. Now, no one is going to debate necessarily that our climates around the world are not beginning to change. I recently watched scientific information and read scientific information to show that there is a movement of rainfall toward the northern segment of the world, where the equatorial area that was once flooded, with rainfall and so on, that is beginning to shift to the north of the equator. And certainly we are dealing with very dry environments at the moment. Africa dealing with them, South America dealing with them. We are seeing some significant dry spells even in Europe and in the United States. These are things that we are aware of. We're also aware of the fact that these are the things that mainstream media is not going to tell you. We have had a 575,000 ton increase in ice in the North Pole. 575,000 tons. Those are facts. If you doubt me, do your research. Go and ask the questions and see what is happening. I'm also aware of the fact that we have had increases in the growth of forests and forestation, and even though there is some deforestation occurring, there are other areas that are springing up. And we saw trees being planted, I think in Europe, 11 million or something like that being planted there. And then when you discuss the matter of carbon dioxide, listen, this is some business that you all really have to give some thought to. When you discuss the matter of carbon dioxide, plants breathe in carbon dioxide and release the majority of oxygen that you and I breathe. So we have to be very careful how we are talking about carbon. And I've heard Mr. Gates express this: carbon dioxide emissions to zero. I've heard them talk about carbon to zero as well. But you can't carry carbon dioxide emissions in the earth to zero. Plant life on the planet would die. And since it's plant life on the planet that gives us oxygen, look, this is stuff you all learned at school. This is stuff you learned at school. If the plants die that deliver the oxygen that we breathe, what do you think is going to happen next? I'm going to leave you to answer that question. The major gases that I'm told come from fossil fuels, one of them is carbon dioxide. It is the primary emission is produced when carbon in fuel combines with the oxygen during combustion. But carbon dioxide, a major percentage of it, is absorbed by plant life. But we are aware of the fact that there is an increase. We accept that. There is an increase in the emissions of carbon dioxide. But another major gas from fossil fuel is water vapor. It's also produced when hydrogens in fuel burn. It is not harmful in itself, but it's part of the combustion chemistry, and we get water where that is concerned. I'm not the expert. I'm reading the information that I asked the experts for. And in case people think that you can't reach experts, I had a show or two with Dr. McCullough during the pandemic. Dr. McCullough sat in front of the American Congress and in the European Union. And I was about to say something, but I'm going to hold it. But we have had discussions. We had an interview with Dr. Maloney, the man who's the architect of the mRNA technology. We had an interview with him concerning it, and I'm not going to delve into all. All I'm saying is, if you want to get a hold of the experts, you can reach them. There are people you can reach. And I tried, and I got through. I saw an article, and I couldn't believe my eyes. In the United Kingdom, they're ripping air-conditioned units out of people's homes, claiming that they are producing carbon dioxide emissions. I couldn't believe my eyes. Now, I am not an expert when it comes to air-conditioned units, but last I checked, air-conditioned units do not deliver any kind of gases unless you rupture something in the air-conditioned unit. It simply blows air across a screen or a facility or a piece of equipment that contains a particular gas which chills the air, and you get the air conditioning. But they are being ripped out of homes in the United Kingdom under the guise of producing carbon emissions. I couldn't believe my ears. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw this foolishness. And we looked at a number of the refrigerants used, the R22, the R410A, the R32, the R454B. These are all refrigerants used that are sealed in the air-conditioned units. And if an air-conditioned unit is working properly, these gases remain sealed inside the system. They should not be released into the air. Where are you getting carbon emissions from an air-conditioned unit? I have said that the government of the United Kingdom has gone insane. And I'm happy to see the Prime Minister resign. I am really, really happy to see the Prime Minister resign. I don't know if I should be saying these things on the air, but I'm thankful that he has stepped down because he was he was doing the United Kingdom gross injustice as the Prime Minister of that country. And I am embarrassed to even see our Prime Minister standing up with him. You got to be careful who you associate with, My mother told me, be careful with the company you keep. You can tell a man by the company he keeps. And when I see people, our leadership, rubbing up with Bill Gates, rubbing up with Charles Schwab, rubbing up with Starmer, rubbing up with the fella from Canada, when I see these things going on, I am saying, wait a minute. I thought in 2022, we became a republic. Why are we rubbing up with these people? Not that you can't have relations. Don't get me wrong. But But why are we getting on as if we can't exist without these people? These people have carried us to the coals, literally carried us to the coals. And we there with a prime minister who has had to step down under the pressure. Even his own cabinet, that's why I respect some of the people in his cabinet. They step down, they resign their portfolios. I challenge any parliamentarian in Barbados. Well, they can't do it here now in Barbados because there has now been legislation passed that you can't cross the floor. So what has happened is that the prime minister and the government have ensured that there can only be one party in the country. Only one. Because if anybody in the government right now, anybody makes an attempt to leave the government and to represent the country as it ought to be represented, they can't do it. They can't cross the floor and sit down. They have to go back to an election. They have to have a by-election. You have to go back to the electorate and ask them for your vote. I hope it happens because Barbadians are waking up. This stuff is getting around. We now have a case, and I'm just touching on things. I'm just touching on it very quickly. And I haven't forgotten Venezuela. All of this to me is tied together. It's not separate. These are things that we have to consider seriously because when things happen, I know people are going to tell me, but we don't have any resources. Who are we going to call upon? There are agreements in place in terms of countries, bilateral agreements that are in place in terms of countries for assistance in the event of natural disasters and national disasters. These are things that you don't have to be a slave to anybody in order to have these matters in a place where we can obtain assistance. But we continue, as Mr. Barra said, to loiter on the doors of our colonial masters. And what we have done in 2022 is we traded the control of the King of England, because the Queen passed away, the King of England, we traded our mastership, our servitude to the King of England, to the King of the World Bank and the King of the IMF. So we are still in the hands of colonial masters. And I am not going to get into this matter of racism because, again, Mr. Solwell sent something to me again. And I was glad that I got it this evening. The word racism is like ketchup. It can be put on practically anything, and demanding evidence makes you a racist. That is what he has indicated. Racism is like ketchup. It can be put practically on anything, and demanding evidence makes you a racist. So I'm not talking about racism here. I am talking about servitude. I am talking about the ability of Barbados to stand on its own 2 feet. I am talking about the fact that as a country, we had prime ministers that allowed Barbados to stand on it alone. We talk about punching above its weight. Our current leadership did not position Barbados to punch above its weight. Our past leadership did that. Mr. Barra did that. Mr. Adams did that. Mr. Arthur did that. Those are men that put our country in a position. And there were others that came along and contributed afterward. Frondell Stewart, Mr. Erskine Sandiford, and our current prime minister. But you can't claim to be the persons who put Barbados on the map. That isn't true. And if anything, you're creating an embarrassment for Barbados now because of the matter to do with climate resilience. But let me get back to Venezuela. Because we need to take a look at our relationship with Venezuela. What is happening? What is our government's action? I haven't heard anything. I don't know if anything has been announced or whatever. I haven't heard anything. And if any of you have heard anything, please make sure you put it in the chat here that I can reference it. But there are a number of newspaper articles, a number of news reports that are coming out of Venezuela. Tremendous devastation, tremendous scenes of death. And when I look, I am challenged to figure out how they're going to pick that country back up. How are you going to, well, not just the, I don't think it's the whole country that has been affected, but it's specific areas. And, you know, as you all would know, last year, my wife and I spent about 3 months in Colombia with her medical emergency to save her life. And I saw some of you asking on the chat earlier, how is she doing? She's improving. She's not out of the woods. She is getting better, a lot stronger. And very shortly, as we are continuing to keep in touch with and report to the Hospital International Colombia concerning her status, we expect to be returning there shortly. We are working on raising the funds to do that, and so that she can complete all of her tests, all of her challenges. We were not even aware of a couple of minor strokes that had occurred. She had issues to do with mold and mildew because of the very old home that we are in here in St. George. And she has several other physical challenges. And, you know, if any of you know my wife, you see her going along and you would never think anything is wrong with her. And I just want to thank God tonight for preserving her life. I really, really do. And she's a tremendous woman. And even in spite of what she's going through, she's still offering assistance to people. She's still counseling with a young lady who attempted to take her life a couple of years ago. She's still working with people, and I really thank God for her. And, you know, I'm grateful. But we were there in Colombia, and we asked about these earthquakes because we were on the 8th floor of a facility where we were staying for those 3 months. We were on the 8th floor. And when I looked at the imagery of people running down steps and coming to the bottom to find they couldn't get out because of the stuff that had collapsed, I tell you, it was just heart-rending, sorry. And I must say, my heart goes out to the people of Venezuela. I want to ask you to be in prayer with them. And, you know, if we wait to see what the government's response is going to be. But we do need to pay attention because there are developing conditions around the Caribbean. There has been an increase in earthquake activity. This is a fact. Dave, I wish I had sent you a video from Mr. Weatherman, who just today reported an earthquake. I'm going to try to send it to you. I don't know if you will be able to get it up in time. I'm going to see if I can get it to you. If I can get it to you in time. But just today, new shaking earthquake 11 hours ago. I'm going to try to send this to you, Dave. And if you can pull this in, it's not a very long video. And if you can pull it in, we can probably take a quick peep at it. I just sent you the link there on WhatsApp, and if you can pull that link in, that would be wonderful for us to look at, because there is a lot of activity happening around Barbados. There was a 4.6 magnitude earthquake just off of let me make sure I get it correctly, just off of Antigua and Barbuda, Guadeloupe and Montserrat, just off to the east of Antigua, Guadeloupe, Montserrat. And this is something that should be concerning all of us. It should be. Thank you, Dave. Let's play a few minutes of this. Mr. Weatherman was in Barbados a couple of weeks ago. He was in Trinidad last week, I believe. And let's just hear for a few minutes, Dave, what he has to say about this increased activity that we're seeing.
2026. I'm meteorologist Brian Shields. New shaking from overnight or very early this morning, just offshore of Antigua and Barbuda in Guadeloupe, an earthquake 4.6 in magnitude, so kind of pressing 5. So that's kind of the threshold of where we really watch out for some shaking. Rather shallow, so you may have felt it. I think a lot of us slept through this. Let me know if you did feel it, but it was on the shallow side. So if you happen to be up super early in the morning and maybe not doing a whole lot or working an overnight shift, you may have felt some of the shaking. Montserrat, back toward Guadeloupe, Antigua and Barbuda in particular, with this earthquake. There are different types of plate boundaries. This one along a convergent plate boundary where you have one plate going underneath another, and sometimes you get a little bit of lift. And I always monitor the tsunami threat with a convergent plate boundary, especially because you do get a bit of that lift. There were no tsunami warnings or anything like that issued. There's been additional shaking north of Antigua, north of the British Virgin Islands, 4.0 in magnitude recently, 4 to about 4.5 parts of Guatemala, El Salvador and Nicaragua the last 2 days. So watching that, of course, this on the heels of what happened a couple days ago, the double earthquakes, the 7.2 in magnitude in Venezuela, and that was followed 39 seconds later by a 7.5 in magnitude. And there have been some aftershocks, which of course hamper, at least temporarily, some of the ongoing rescue efforts there. There was one last night of about 4.4 in magnitude. So some additional aftershocks are likely where we had these incredibly significant earthquakes, and the scenes have been so devastating, heartbreaking. There's just really no words from that. This community stands behind you in northern Venezuela. And anyone just really dealing with this. We're thinking of those rescue workers working so very hard, the medical teams, all of that, just folks helping one another. This was on a transform plate boundary, the double earthquakes in Venezuela. Those are two plates, strike slip, kind of sliding past each other in very, very major earthquakes back to back. Just horrific scenes coming out of there.